Welcome back to Main Mission Hope. I'm so glad you're here today as we explore together the Christian New Testament, a collection of writings that lie at the heart of the Christian faith. So if you're new to Christianity or finding your way back after some time away, like me, this can feel like a big step, but it's a step worth taking. The New Testament offers a hope, a path to understanding God's love, and guidance for living a life that blesses you and those around you. In this video, I'm going to try and look at the different books in the New Testament, what they're about, how they differ across Catholic, Protestant and some Orthodox traditions, and why they matter. I'll also talk about which ones might be easier or harder to understand as you begin. So let's dive in with an open heart. However, as always with these videos, I've got to give you a caveat and say I'm not a professional theologian. So take everything I say with a pinch of salt. There's probably quite a few errors in the things I'm talking about. And hopefully these videos are more of a primer to get you interested in discovering and researching more about these particular subjects. So, the New Testament made up of 27 books written nearly 2,000 years ago, and they tell the story of Jesus Christ and the early Christian church. The books are grouped into four categories: the Gospels, Acts, the Epistles and Revelation. Across Catholic, Protestant and most Orthodox traditions, the 27 books are the same. While there are differences in the Old Testament, like the additional books Catholics call the Deuterocanon, the New Testament remains a shared foundation. Some Orthodox churches, like the Ethiopian Orthodox, include extra writings, but for most, it's these 27 books we'll focus on today. And I guess I'd add as well the fact that originally there was no Bible. So what we have today with these lovely books or electronic files that we have on our devices, we're treating the Bible as one continuous book. But originally it wouldn't have been. It would have been all these other books that were then brought together. So the Gospels. First we have the Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. These four books recount the life, teachings, death and resurrection of Jesus, the cornerstone of our faith. Matthew shows Jesus as the promised Messiah, connecting him to Old Testament prophecies. Mark, the shortest gospel, moves quickly through Jesus' miracles and actions, making it a great starting point. Luke offers a detailed, compassionate look at Jesus, written probably by a physician who cared about the outcast. John goes deeper, exploring Jesus as the divine Son of God, full of hope and eternal promise. For newcomers, the Gospels are where I'd begin. They bring you face to face with Jesus in a way that's clear and inspiring. And remember, sometimes when we look at the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, we look at them in a way of thinking, okay, so these are all written from four people's different points of view. Therefore, to get at the truth, we need to be like a detective and bring all the bits together to make like a continuous story. But I don't think you should look at them like that. You should look at them as different ways of looking at Jesus. Each author has written, and each of them has a different thing to say about the different aspects of Jesus and Christianity. And so it's not a case of trying to figure out which one was righter or more correct or more truthful than the other. They're all giving us a different point of view. And they're also a great start to the Gospels, I think, to read through them and note some of the changes. And this is especially true if you're reading a Bible that has study aids with it, or an electronic version of the Bible where you can look at articles and you can look at the differences, and it starts to get you to question what's in the Bible. And I think this is really important because questions lead to understanding, and understanding leads to deeper faith. So you can look at the different ways that Jesus behaved when he was on the cross, and you can ask why, and what do the different Gospels say, and what does that mean? There you go. So that should get you started. So Acts. Next is the book of Acts. This picks up on after Jesus ascends to heaven, showing how his followers, led by Peter and Paul, spread his message. It's a story of courage and growth, the birth of the church we're part of today. Acts reads like an adventure, and it's fairly easy to follow, making it another good early read. Then comes the Epistles, letters written by early Christian leaders. They're split into two groups: the Pauline epistles and the general epistles. The Pauline epistles, written by the Apostle Paul, include books like Romans 1 and 2, Corinthians, Galatians, Ephesians, Philippians, Colossians, Thessalonians, Timothy, Titus and Philemon. I hope I said all that right. These tackle big questions: how to live as a Christian, what salvation means, and how to build a church. Romans, for example, explains faith and grace in depth, while Philippians lifts us up with joy. The general epistles, Hebrews, James 1 and 2, Peter 1, 2 and 3, John and Jude, speak to a broader audience. James urges to live out our faith through deeds, and John's letters remind us of God's love. Hebrews can feel weighty, diving into Christ's role as our high priest, but it's rich with meaning. Finally, there's Revelation, a book of vivid symbols and visions about the end times and God's ultimate victory. It's mysterious and challenging, yet it promises hope. No matter how dark things get, God prevails. Now, so what's different between Catholic, Protestant and Orthodox New Testaments? For these 27 books, not much. They're the same across the traditions. The real differences show up in the Old Testament or in rare cases like some Orthodox churches and adding texts. But this shared New Testament unites us in the story of Jesus and his church. So why read it? Well, the New Testament isn't just old words. It's alive with purpose. It reveals God's plan to save us through Jesus. It teaches us how to live with love, integrity and hope. In tough times, it offers comfort. In confusion, it gives clarity. Reading it can transform how you see yourself and the world, drawing you closer to God and others. It's a light for anyone who's felt lost, and that's a gift worth seeking. Now, some books are easier to start with. Mark and Luke are straightforward stories, perfect for beginners. Acts flows like a narrative too. The epistles, like Roman or Hebrews, can be tougher with their deep theology. Don't rush them. Revelation symbols make it the hardest, but don't let that scare you. Start with the Gospels, maybe use a modern translation, and lean on a study guide or a group if you hit a wall. It's okay to take it slow, and that's really where a lot of the Bible apps help, because often you'll be able to read a particular version of the Bible that you want to, and then within that app they'll have study guides that can explain what different passages mean. Also, and I think this is very, very important to understand, and it can be difficult to get your head around this, because you must understand, I think, that the Bible, and especially the New Testament, was written by men, written by people. And God gave people free will. So what that means is, if you've got free will and you're not just a robot, a puppet of God, it means that when you write things down, or you hear things and write things down, you can make mistakes. You might misunderstand things. And remember, the Bibles we have today are copies of copies of copies of copies of copies. And so throughout the thousands of years since they were written, many, many mistakes will have been introduced. And also, and I think this is super important, the Bible wasn't written in English. I think, and I might be wrong on this, I'll have to do a video about it, but I think we think the original scripts were written in Greek. So you have Greek being written down and copied, and then translated into Latin, and then maybe translated into English at a time as well. Remember, if we go back to Greek and Latin, at a time where there were no dictionaries to tell you how to spell words, and maybe people who were copying them didn't know the meaning of the words. And then we have all this finally coming to the English Bibles we have today. So just remember that. So if things seem unclear or contradictory or difficult to understand in the Bible, it may be because sometimes in these thousands of years of copying and translations from other languages, things might have been lost in translation and lost in copying. I think that's important, and that's why I think, as well, speaking personally, I think it's important not to take too many things literally with the Bible, because I think to take things literally, we would have to go back to the source script, which don't exist anymore. We don't have the first copy of Matthew, Mark, Luke or John, and read it and understand it in its original language. Now, that isn't to take anything away from the Bible, because the New Testament, it's a treasure waiting for you. And it's not about mastering it overnight. It's about letting it speak to you bit by bit, whether you're searching for hope, purpose, or God himself. I think these books can really guide you home. So, thank you for joining me today. If this has appealed and blessed you, please like and subscribe as we journey together in faith. Until next time, may you find peace in his word.